Sometimes love doesn't leave. It just waits. Waits for the right moment, the right heart, the right courage. This is the story of Ethan and Claire, two dreamers who met when life was cruel, but hearts were kind. And the day they met, neither of them knew that one simple act of kindness would change everything. It was a rainy morning in London. Ethan sat at a cafe corner, staring at a half-written novel on his laptop. His dream was to be a writer, but failure had a way of whispering louder than hope. Across the street, Claire was running late for work again. Her umbrella flipped inside out in the wind, and she burst into laughter, the kind that makes strangers smile. Ethan looked up, and for the first time in months, he smiled too. Sometimes destiny doesn't knock. It just crosses the road in the rain. When Claire came in for coffee, Ethan lent her his dry napkin. Their fingers brushed. Just a second, but sometimes a second is all love needs to begin. Days turned into weeks. They met often, not by plan, but by rhythm. She sat by the window sketching designs. He typed stories beside her. No words, just a quiet comfort that said, "You belong here." One evening, Claire noticed his laptop screen. "You're a writer?" she asked. "Trying to be," Ethan smiled. "Then write something worth trying for," she said, sipping her coffee. Those words, "worth trying for," stayed with him like sunlight in a dark room. He began to write again, about hope, about courage, about her. But not all love stories bloom easily. Ethan got an offer from a small publishing house in New York. Claire had just launched her own art studio in London. When he told her, silence filled the room. "It's your dream," she said finally, her voice trembling. "You should go. And us, if it's real, it'll survive distance." That night, under dim streetlights, they promised each other, "No matter what, we'll find our way back." Months passed. They wrote letters, sent photos, stayed awake for time zone calls at 11. But as success came knocking for Ethan, exhaustion came knocking for them. Deadlines replaced late-night talks. Airports replaced long walks. One day her message came late, then later, then never. Sometimes love doesn't end with goodbye. It just fades in silence. Ethan's novel became a bestseller, but every word felt empty because she wasn't there to read it first. 3 years later, Ethan returned to London for a book signing. Fame followed him everywhere. Cameras, fans, endless questions, but none of them asked the one thing he longed to hear. "Are you okay?" After the event, he walked to that same cafe, the one with the window seat and the rainy memories. It was still there, but the barista had changed. The lights were dimmer. He ordered her favorite, vanilla latte, and smiled at the empty chair across him. That's when a familiar voice said, "You remembered my order." He froze. It was her. Claire looked older, softer, with eyes that had seen storms. She'd moved away after her studio failed and her mother fell ill. Life had changed her, but her smile, that smile hadn't aged a day. They sat in silence before she said, "You became everything you dreamed of. Without you, none of it mattered," he whispered. For a long time, they said nothing. The rain outside began again, the same rain from the day they met, as if the universe wanted to rewind the story, one drop at a time. But Claire had plans now. A new gallery opening, this time in Paris. Ethan had a new contract. Another book, another tour. The old question returned, career or heart? That night, Ethan wrote again, but not a novel, a letter. "You once told me to write something worth trying for. I finally understand. Love is what's worth trying for. If you ever find this letter, meet me where it all began. Our cafe, 6 p.m. Friday." He left it at her art studio door. Friday came. The clock hit 6 o'clock. Rain began to fall, soft and slow, like old memories returning home. Ethan sat at the same table, heart pounding. 6:05, 6:10, 6:30, still nothing. He smiled sadly, packed his things, and stood to leave. But then, the bell above the door rang. She stood there, drenched, breathless, holding that letter. "You're still terrible at writing endings," she whispered. He laughed through tears. "Then let's write a new beginning." They hugged, long, trembling, real. Years later, that cafe became their cafe. Her paintings hung on the walls. His novels lined the shelves. Every evening, they sat by the window. Two dreamers who didn't give up on time or love. Sometimes love doesn't need promises. It just needs patience and faith that the heart knows the